Fear addicted, nature illustrated. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. Fire starter, twisted fire starter. On the bitch you hated, infatuated. Yeah. On the plate you tasted, felt intoxicated. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. You're a fire starter, twisted fire starter. My detonator. Yeah. I'm the one infected, twisted animator. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. that. Sweeter than a cherry power ready with top. If a mic, the mic, begin the war to war. Well, I'll be going out to people like a casting call. Oh, well, it's like when you're jacked in the back of the mind. But you know, what you fall when your mouth getting by. Believe me, oh, what you see is what you get. And you see me, I'm coming up and you come back. Well, I think I'm losing my mind this time I'm losing my mind. That's why I said I think I'm losing my mind this time I'm losing my mind. Yeah, you can't front on that.
And good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. While the world's, well, spinning unusually over these last weeks, seems like the media is driving as much fear they can as they can. But then on the opposite side, when you're looking at the markets, and I know not a lot of you will follow the markets, but near World War III, nuclear exchange ish, and the oil prices dropped $15 a barrel. Crypto drops, then it springboards back up to near record highs again. Everything we're seeing, in my opinion, is just a narrative to drive fear, and I'm looking at it as ethereal food for interdimensional entities. I know, going there deep this quick. But I really believe what we're seeing is nothing more than, I'm at the point of seeing some memes that says nothing ever happens. And I saw this long list of these things that were going to just drastically change our world, and then nothing. Just backs off. But what it does during the time of that is, well, you're looking over this way when something else is happening that way. But at the same time, what's the emotion that's being generated? And if you come at it from a more like a wider view of how the world is structured, from a central banking at the top, and then there's the Bank for International Settlements above that at the apex, that tell our central banks what to do. And those central banks tell our governments what to do. And the governments tell our militaries, corporations what to do. But now the central banks and the companies are in bed together. We call that a F word. And then they tell the citizens what to do. But as we trace that chain back up, you can never find the true peak. The cornerstone, the eye stone, whatever kind of stone, the capstone is never visible. And you have to wonder why this capstone orders from the top down to keep humanity perpetually in debt, perpetually in fear, perpetually working, perpetually a harvestable entity as a human resource. It's a perfect word for it. Now, as we move forward, I just wanted to come through my new insurance policy here to start us off for something interesting. So rates did go up about 15% on my auto, even though it is now 10 years old. I just drive an old pickup truck around on the farm to do things in town. I got a large pickup bed on that. I can go pick up hay, fences, feed, lumber, whatever you want to use for the farm. So I have this old pickup. Why would I buy a brand new pickup truck to go beat the thing up, throwing rocks in the back of it, trees in the back of it, branches, whatever, hauling chainsaws around? Why would I go buy something new when it's going to be continually used and dinged and battered? So I just keep an old pickup truck. So anyway, to even just insure that pickup truck, it cost me 15% more this year. But with the new clause And this is what I wanted to say. These things in the world are changing enough here. So insurance companies often, at least I've been told, they are being given the information of where our world will be in 2 to 3 years. So they structure the policies around what is forecast through, like I say, the capstone of the pyramid of what to expect in an individual nation. Now, what I see here on my insurance policy is probably going to be different when they would find in like Indonesia, for example. Here we go. Notice of reduction of coverage, as in will not pay out for, and I quote, civil war, rebellion, revolution, war-like act by military force or military personnel. Doesn't say which one, U.S. or foreign. Destruction or seizure or use for military purposes of your vehicle and the explosion of a nuclear weapon or its consequences. That's not covered under the new policy. So again, I would ask you, they send me this here, 2025 update terms of service, plus a nice little increase. So all I do is pay bills and work. So how's your life going? Anyway, Ransom Godwin with me tonight, as always, bringing you through the next 2 hours. The world is definitely on a shift here. And Ransom, I didn't know, just before the show started, you were talking about being pulled over and having to show proof of insurance and that whole thing there. I don't know if you want to go into it, but just the letter of the law seems to be kind of opaque as well.
Well, my point was when we were talking is basically I have insurance that insures me as a driver, as a person. If you read through the insurance agreement, it says it covers me in any car I drive that's applicable to my license. You know, it's not going to cover me if I'm doing something I need a CDL for or something like that. However, if you get pulled over anywhere USA, they're going to argue the fact that the car must have valid insurance. But if the car's not mine, why would I have insurance on it if I'm driving? Or, there's all kinds of scenarios where you would be driving something else other than your own personal car that you had insurance specifically on. I have insurance for me. And actually, if most people read their insurance, it'll say that on there, that they are covered as a person, even though it's for a certain car, because that's what you're agreeing to. Like, sometimes you agree that you're only going to be driving that car under a certain amount of mileage per year, and you're not going to let people borrow it, and you're not going to do this, and they'll ask you all that. And if you answer no to everything, basically you get a cheap insurance rate. But that's really irrelevant kind of to, I think, what's going on and why you just read that unusual, basically it's a modern user agreement there that that they updated the user agreement to you in your insurance there. Now let's go over that again, because I have this thought brewing that I think is the answer to exactly why that says that. Something about Civil War and using your car for weird stuff or whatever.
I'm trying to find some other parts here for you. Relatives. Yeah, I wanted to show this here. There's also a strange clause in here that doesn't make sense for me. I've never seen it before. Language has been revised to clarify that coverage extends only to you or any relative that you reside with when you or such relative are occupying the vehicle. But if I'm driving and my sister's with me or whatnot, she's covered. So that's one part there. Ransom, how's it coming? I want to make sure I'm on the correct microphone. Can you hear the tap on?
Yeah, I think you're lagging out a little bit. That's all. You roboted out on me for a second.
Can you not hear me at all?
I can hear you. I just don't think that you're getting the signal. You're
Device
not getting the signal, man.
Unexpectedly stopped with that like this. Okay, Ransom, here we go. You ready? Civil War?
Yeah, there we are. Civil War. And I think I know exactly why
Civil War,
that's in there.
rebellion, revolution, warlike act by military forces or military personnel. Again, it doesn't do consequences. This notice is to inform you politely that the specific terms and conditions of your coverage have changed. Revolution or military personnel confiscating my vehicle, or a detonation of a nuclear weapon, or the consequences, like an EMP, would fry my engine. But I guess that's where we sit in the modern 2025. So what do you interpret about that?
Well, let's see here. I think I can show you. Here. Look at this. Downright unsafe. Austin man takes a Tesla robo-taxi ride, and it gets into, dangers in this. But I think the reason they're rewriting all of that and your insurance is going to go up, it's not only that they want to stop people from driving older gasoline-powered cars, which is an agenda. They also don't want people driving cars where they are deciding where they're going, where they're the pilot of their own craft. So they're going to transfer all the new models over to this self-driving, basically an auto car. Kind of like whenever that guy's Mercedes drove into the palm tree and, his motor block blew down the street. Everybody then said it was a conspiracy theory. But now I think we could all agree and accept that here it is. We're in the future. The auto manufacturers are making automated cars that are under the control of someone else, namely the AI at first, but then above that, other forms of control. And then here's an article about Chinese, another car to compete with the Tesla. Now, I myself wouldn't advise this because I've seen a lot of videos about these cars blowing up and people not being able to get out of them. There's all kinds of design flaws with them. They're really cheap to make, but they're testing out stuff without having to rely on safety requirements. So unfortunately, some people pay the price for, owning one of these cars. But secondly, to get back to your insurance.
Oh, it's called Xiaomi. Xiaomi is the way you would pronounce that company name. XIAO is Xiao and MI is me. Xiaomi.
Yeah, well, there's several of them that are making these, and they're not that great yet. But give them some time, and it'll become the standard, just like it's going to become the standard over here, where everybody assumes that they're going to continue to drive their gasoline-powered cars. Now, the cars might continue to be gasoline-powered. They're just not going to be driven by you. So we all know that it's kind of a sham, the electric car. It's too toxic. It's too much mining. There's too little of what they want, really, for to excuse the whole world in this utopia where we all drive around electric stuff. However, there seems to be an abundant resource called fossil fuels that is not going to run out anytime soon. And they can run this entire AI network with gasoline powered cars. The thing knows where to drive to get refueled. It'll just drive up. Then there'll be an automated gas pump that just refuels it. You'll take no part in it. You will only be a passenger. Now, there are a lot of dangers, and that's what they're talking about, when these things go haywire and all this stuff. But back to the insurance thing. If in the near future, which I'm assuming is going to be, most, or if not all, the auto manufacturers are going to move over to this software and hardware being installed in the car, whether or not they sell it to you where you could drive it yourself or not. The option will be there for auto braking. It'll be just like, people really forgot the OnStar real fast because that was a beta program to see if they could turn your car off from space and lock you in it. And they did that to a number of people that were wanted. Despite not having warrants, they used the network that was privately owned, and they cooperated and just did it. So they totally circumvented any kind of due process by that, and they would just lock you in your car, and then the police would come and they'd bust out the windows and drag you out and whatever. Now that's worst case scenario, but what if you get debanked? What if they decide to go the other direction with social credit scoring, which they've continued to set up despite people acting like it disappeared or it's not going to happen? It's still being built. They're still, all the companies are still there. They're still receiving all the data. Matter of fact, I can't even look at this article without agreeing to share with third parties my reading interests here. So in order to read half of these articles, you have to agree to let that company use that data on what you're interested in, what you're reading, when you read it, how soon you knew it. And here's like, we'll get into an example of how this is a little bit scary. But to get back to the car, it's going to be increasingly more expensive for you to insure a car that you're driving. They're going to keep listing more and more things that are reasons why you're the risk and not the AI, not the car. It's you. Faulty driving, distracted driving, driving under the influence. There's just people using cars for weapons. So this is where I want to circle back to that insurance thing. So we've already seen around the world when cars attack, in the UK, trucks attack people, and Europe, trucks attack Christmas festivals, and over here in the US, the cars run over people. Just like guns kill people, so do cars. Cars kill people too, right? It's not the driver, it's the car, but it is the driver, and they're going to say that you're the risk factor. And then you'll have to pay more and more insurance to pay for you being able to drive and be in control of your car because you're a danger. So people are going to give in to not having a more expensive life, except for the ultra rich, which will still have, hot rods in their garage and that old SS, Corvette. I mean, not Corvette, Chevelle in their garage, and they'll drive that around. But they'll pay really expensive insurance to be able to do that amongst all of the auto driving cars. And people are just now coming around to the realities that they don't want semis driving themselves down the highway when that's been happening for the last 15 years. And matter of fact, we've kept track of that on this channel. I've told people there were already 12 states involved like 5 years ago that were allowing AI delivered goods to be delivered by self-driving trucks. Now, they had a human being in there now, kind of being the nanny or whatever to make sure everything runs. But the more streamlined these programs become, the less the human is involved. And that's what it's going to turn out to be. Now, back to the cars attacking people. With a little bit of know-how, obviously, in the case of Michael Hastings, his car drove in a way that he didn't want it to. And the company Mercedes said, our cars don't blow out the engine block and transmission and drive themselves into trees. And they were like, full stop. You can take that however you want it. Now, he was a reporter that was reporting on things that was uncomfortable for a lot of people. But what happens when you have whole movements or groups of people deem that they're no good? So your car can, have a accident very easily. Now, that's the high end of the conspiracy realm. But what about the low end? Just some average jerk off that knows how to code, and he wanted to cause some mayhem, so he made your car run into the overpass, or drive into a gasoline truck for maximum damage or something like that. So it's going to be becoming more and more common for people to be able to hack these auto cars and make them do things that they're not supposed to be doing. And of course, the companies are not going to take liability for that. So you have to have pre-legislation, pre-insurance rules, all of this business savvy stuff set up for the day that that's a possibility, which I would say is right around the corner.
Yeah, Ransom. I could say also, if you coded in that to turn on the heat like it was here, incredibly hot. It was around around 100. I think it got to 99 and a half here or something. But the humidity was off the chart, and it felt like it was, you went outside, you could definitely feel it was a very different vibration. Like even breathing, I felt like, I kid you not, I felt like I was on a different planet, breathing different atmosphere on a different planet. That's how hot it was. Now imagine programming it in to cause you to run off into a ditch in the middle of absolutely nowhere and then crank the heat up to as high as it could go in your car. You would absolutely roast to death in that thing. Like, that's no joke.
Yeah,
Like,
you would.
and I would encourage everybody to have one of those window breakers in your car.
Yeah. If you don't want to buy one, you can just bust a spark plug and collect the ceramic pieces. That's a better
Some
glass breaker than any
many
of
people
those.
have the window breakers on that.
You're lagging out again for some reason. Only when we split here. Let's go full screen.
Would you be able
Let's see if
to get out of your car. I mean,
What?
what do you have to break a window? It's very difficult to break a window out of a car. You have no idea. I've seen many those.
Um, I think, I actually got what he was saying there. He was
There we
saying
go.
how many of you actually have window busters in your cars that you could do something in case of an emergency. But a little life hack, take a hammer to a used spark plug and hit it and crack it and collect the little pieces. If you have that in your glove box or whatever, you'll never need a window cracker again. You just flick that thing literally like this, flick, boom, it'll go right through it. That's science. That's awesome. I think he's back.
I am
Maybe he's
back.
good.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, when we share the screen like that, it kind of lags out. But I'm absolutely saying you, as just a safety precaution, should have one of those window breakers. You can slice your seatbelt open with it or cut the seatbelt. You can break the windows. And a lot of people, after seeing, if your car goes underwater, it's going to be near impossible. I've seen that same thing, just like the smallest chip of a spark plug can absolutely just break through a window. That's the craziest force of physics that you can explain, is the smallest piece of a spark plug thrown, just like a child could throw it, just shatters a window. That's another thing that people should think about. But going back to what you were talking about with fossil fuels and all these rare earth metals, to put it in perspective here, ladies and gentlemen, just the copper, one of the most common things, copper, the pennies used to be made out of it, our pipes used to be made out of it. The copper alone, just to do this transition into the green economy, would take at present 200 years to mine. 200 years. That's a common metal. Some of these metals that we would need for rare earths would take up to 800 years to mine enough to get us through this transition that was planned. So, the real mathematicians pushing now the numbers out here are making the rest of the world wake up and go, you know what? This whole green movement's just not going to happen. I mean, they can tell us one thing in news. And again, this comes back to the reality of what is this news, this thing called news, global news, headline news, whatever kind of news it is, mainstream news. What they're telling you and feeding you is really the opposite. We're in an inverted illusion here. The inverted hologram. I've really had a few revelations these last few days, especially with all this war stuff kicking off, that we are living in an illusionary hologram. And this news cycle is there to morph the reality in a way that benefits those at the capstone in terms of harvesting energy. And I say that, and I kid you not, etherically. I don't think the rulers of this planet are even human any longer. That we are into a non-human intelligence, and it doesn't have to be AI. It could be actual physical or interdimensional realm interaction, because they really got deep into it with the Order of the Golden Dawn and Aleister Crowley and all these things in the 1800s, 1880s with their seances, and they touched something on the other side. The lesser and the greater keys of the Goetia. This was like a thing at the parties. Then the modern day thing with the Ouija board, that's super small. But, if you go back in time, there was that somewhere around the industrialist age beginning of the 1880s where they seemed to have re-tapped into something. And again, I'm wondering how this transitions on a circle of itself in terms of we come to this point. We actually have reached this point several times in the past and we've collapsed. This technology itself may take a minute to re-evolve, but again, those incantations and chants and verbal incantations to be able to break on through to the other side, for an example, have been known since Solomon's times, right? You're talking about frequency and vibration using vocal harmonics to chant or incantate. So that could be at any time through our past. But those knowledge, that ancient books and the wisdom of that sort of thing, if you want to call it, to tap into that side of things. This is what's harvesting humanity right now and in play of control of this planet. What I saw in the news feeds these last few days cannot be real at all. If we're at the brink of a world war and everybody has, the Bible and all these prophecy things, and they've been gearing us toward this for 20 years, and it's biblical, it's the Middle East, blah, blah, blah. And then we come up to the brink of it and then suddenly it pulls back. And everything during that time that was going on as well. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a sinus thing going on in the middle of summer. I hate those. Too much aircon or out near the fire or whatever. The opposite occurred of everything that should have occurred in real time and like a real ABC chain of events. We should be at least at $120 a barrel oil. We should not be back sub 70 oil. It went up to 85, 86, and then it drops right back to 70, like one day after. So the illusion out here is nothing more than to get us. And the reason I'm telling you this, to be more discerning on the news, almost when you start to see these stories, do the counter trade on it. Or think counterintuitively on it. So we saw all these things happen in the Middle East, and you're like, okay, this would happen in a real world. But none of it did. What would be the opposite of it, do you think? Oil prices are going to go up? No, oil prices are going to go down. Crypto is going to go down? No, crypto went up. We blew through 20% of all the THAAD missiles that we had in the American arsenal defending Israel in those short 12 days. That's why they needed a truce anyway. So is that even real? Why would the government come out? Why would our U.S. government come out and tell everybody that we blew through 20% of the missiles that all of America owns and contains and is manufactured? Again, I'm going, I don't believe that at all. They probably manufactured 20% more missiles during that time using AI and robotic lines. And these old missiles that we're seeing are just old stockpile they're trying to get rid of anyway. They try to bring in, like Ransom, you say, this new era of tech, which leads me to, this is the whole thing I keep getting at here, is they're trying to sell us a world that doesn't exist. Or does it on the inverse? Because the amount of available electricity that we have, and in these last 2 decades, they have cut nuclear, they've cut natural gas, they've cut coal burning power plants. Yet the rise of all these technologies that are going to be the new world require more electricity than ever in human history to be produced. So on one end, they've completely removed electrical sources that need constant generation for AI, all the crypto mining and different blockchain applications that need constant electricity to run and validate a blockchain, whatever that takes. We have all the human needs for homes, etc. And then we have the industrial needs for office buildings as well as factories. And now, might I add, electric cars. So on one hand, they're feeding us that this world will require all this extra minerals, which aren't going to ever exist. They're going to require at least 20 to 50 more electricity than's ever generated ever, or even at the apex of all fossil fuel and nuclear generation tandem at that apex moment, add 50% more sources that would allow us to continue. So, these I don't know if I'm living in an inverted hologram.
You might be in a simulation.
And that's
I think it's a simulation.
truly the way
No,
I'm
you
looking.
lagged out on us again. There we go. That's funny. You were talking about what can you believe here? That's kind of where I was going earlier about I was going to circle the insurance thing and how they're slowly prepping people for not having control over things, and even not just not having control over things, but like information itself. And I've been talking about this a lot right here. Is they're just going to rewrite everything. Musk wants Grok AI to rewrite the entire corpus of human knowledge. He's not the only one. All of these other AI companies that are running it, like I've been saying, they have this weird bias in it. And then, the car thing is one thing, and it makes sense that they would be preparing for that because there's going to be a whole new world of not only just them forcing you to use the new things, but not being able to fix or get the parts or none of that for the old things. Like, they have these insurance auto auctions that they're slowly closing across the U.S. It's just where most people go buy cars and stuff like that, and then they use those parts to refix the cars. And then you have these articles. Are they real? Or do they just want you to feel a certain way? NATO has just surrendered Ukraine to Putin, but that's the Telegraph there. And then where was this other one over here? Yeah, Russian banks having their debt crisis, which I thought kind of intersected into this other one. Israel designates Iran central bank terror organization because this is how the new world's going to work. The tech oligarchs and people you'll never see are going to decide who gets to bank and who doesn't. Now, I don't really care if the Iran bank itself, like I don't have a feeling about that, but it's just a point that they can turn on and off things from a banking perspective. And then, is reality
Wait,
reality?
no, Ransom, could I interject there? I mean, they've been broadcasting this forever. The only reason we got regime change happening in Iraq and Libya and Syria is because they didn't have a Western-backed central bank in that country anyway. These are the last countries that are the holdouts that don't have Western central banks, like Russia, China, North Korea. And why do we keep demonizing them as the boogeyman forever? Because they don't have our Western central banks, and they have not agreed to and always fight it. Iran as well. Look what we did to all those countries. You showed me that clip last week. What was it? Wesley Clark said we're going to take out 7 countries. If you look at those 7 countries, all 7 of them did not have any central Western banks. They needed to remove all of them. So here we are. This is just such in the playbook of ridiculousness that you can see right through it. Okay, so you're telling me that there's no Western central bank, and they want the Rothschilds banking central bank system inside. And Russia. But now they designate a central bank that doesn't want to play in the Western world as a terrorist organization. It's so clear to see. I mean, it's almost comical to even read these headlines right now.
Well, right. And especially if, if the Russians are having problems and the Chinese are having problems, and we can just go down the list to every country in the world that has all this massive debt and issues. And people joke around, well, if the whole world's in debt, who are they in debt to? Well, the obvious answer would be the banks. However, who are the banks representing? Who are they paying? And it's kind of hard to argue this whole idea. They're saying we're also, in the problem. that our dollar bubble is going to pop eventually. But
No, the
this
Bank
is
for International Settlements, that's who all the central banks are indebted to. That's why I say when you're going up this pyramid, when you get to the capstone, that is the top that owns and controls the Bank for International Settlements.
right,
Like
and they're
all these banks are indebted to the BIS. So what they're going to do is start pledging gold and land and real estate and humans as the capital into, and again, what operates that system? Because other than Karsten and a few other names and maybe a face and maybe a website, you just never see these people who truly control it. That's what the world is pledged to in debt, is that organization. But again, I mean, step outside the box a little bit here, because that goes way past human control. At that point, you are, so what? You're the Bank for International Settlements. You control all capital, all land, all minerals, all humans, and everything that's ever been generated or generates wealth on this planet. Does it stay on this planet is the question. I'm going to throw it out.
Well, that's an idea, but I kind of see it just as a corporate reorganization here. And then when I see these headlines like Goldman sees copper peaking in August, that tells me a lot of people are buying the copper. And then on the street level, people are stealing the copper. And then at the recycling place, they're recycling the copper. But what's going on is we had an age where all of these materials were easily available to people that build things or make things at home. They're not going to be able to do that now when you're having to, look through the new equipment to tear apart to get this stuff out of there to make new things. You can't do it. Somebody's buying it all up. It's all being bought up. So it's the reason for that is because they're going to move to this whole robotic control system where you think that your product is yours, you bought it, but you really don't own it, and you need to constantly update it, and it has security measures that decide for you what you're going to do, and that links right into your banking and your social credit score. Where are you allowed to go? And at the same time, you also are bringing like this, the way that they want this set up now is where basically you have a witness that goes with you everywhere, right? So first it was the phone. The phone's going to morph into your car. Your car's now going to be the center of your communication, the center of your transportation. You're going to be able to do your banking through your phone and all of these other things. But you're not going to be driving that, and you're not really going to be deciding much. This is the kind of way that we're going. And then you see these articles like, this is the stuff I've been saying right here. They want to control what's real. They want to rewrite history. They want to have the algorithms tell you things. And then this is what really blows your mind at right here. The front page of the dead internet. In the AI age, Reddit users are questioning what's even real anymore. And the truth is if you're looking at a blurry video of a UFO or some kind of military operation in a third world country or what of that, if you really look at the video quality versus a brand new AI generated video, you can see that an AI can make those old pixelated films to look like they did whatever you want. So you can say this happened in Iran in 1970, you can do whatever. But this gets into, people are wondering, not only are the things that they're looking at real, but the news anchors, are they real? Are the people I'm talking to on the internet real? This is kind of the point that we're making here, is that we are at a point in time where you can question reality. What is real? What is not real? You don't really know from a visual input standpoint, like if you're a computer program, I don't know.
You're straight out of the Matrix, my friend. You
Well,
look
yeah,
like that one. You look like that 1 and 0 pattern coming straight out of the Matrix.
well, that's what's messed up is
Agent
anybody
Smith.
with a little bit of knowledge can tinker with stuff or play with stuff, and that reverts back to the cars and why they would be changing the insurance verbiage on there is because in the near future, well, there's I don't know, maybe a hydrogen powered car or some other kind of electric generated car or whatever you want. You can program it to go someplace just as easy as I can get on my DJI drone and fly it into something. And if you don't believe me, just ask the Ukrainians. They've been doing that nonstop for the past 10 years. And then they got into a war in 2020, and then from then on, they've been doing it. It's the robot wars right in front of your face. And that's the reason that they're worried and they're scared, because you can't transition into this robot AI run world without people that with hacking skills and programming skills, coding skills that can alter the function of all of these products. But don't worry, we'll just change, reality for you. So there's people actually on the internet all over the place discussing whether or not the inputs that they're receiving are real or are they fake. And like I said, you could go to Twitter and watch a video and then compare it to some of the new AI generations, which will be, I'm going to say exponentially better in the next few years. So your eye will literally not be able to tell if that's a real person, if that's a real place. Like right now, the AI has a problem with text, but I'm sure that there's an algorithm that can clean that up where it'll spell things right and write the right text. It's really alarming, if nothing else. And then here's this article. If you remember when Nyquist was on, he was talking about how Russia, not just the Western nations, but Russia also was pushing migrants into the UK. And here's this story. But can you believe this story? After we've seen decades of European nations aiding and pushing and writing papers at Davos and the World Economic Forum and other places about how they needed to push migrant populations up into Europe. And then you get into the kind of woo-woo that we talk about that, maybe just possibly they might be planning for an alternate future in just a few decades or less than 100 years of a totally different Earth. And when I say that, I'm not claiming that it's going to happen or say that I have facts that says, this is definitely going to happen. But this is a really cool article. I sent it to you earlier. And this is a whole lineage of human beings that kind of fits into the puzzle that we're always talking about. So this is ancient DNA from the Green Sahara, reveals ancestral North African lineage. Now, this is the only group of people that they've ever found in history that are a mix of sub-Saharan African and people from the Levant area 7,000 years ago and before that existed. This is the out of Africa theory that never happened because they never left Africa. They lived in the Sahara right there, and they lived there and they herded animals, they farmed. There was all kinds of stuff here. This is back when the Sahara was wet. There was a whole buffer of people for 60,000 years up until about 7,000 years ago with lineage that is not represented in today's people of the world that just existed there, and they got forgotten time. They lived there and they did all of this stuff. And you look at some of these maps, and this is the stuff that you're talking about. We're going back into. This is a future of a wet Sahara. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying if it was possible that weather patterns did change and the Sahara changed, you would be having these big old lakes here.
Yeah, it's
and you
like
would have
Chad from the old mega lake. That was the largest lake up there.
Absolutely. And you'd have these massive populations. And this paper's about a population of people that date back to about 60,000 years ago. And they mixed with sub-Saharan Africans about 50,000 years ago. And they just lived here while everybody else was doing their thing. The Cro-Mags, the Denisovans, the Neanderthals, all of that stuff were doing their own thing. And these guys were living there, harvesting stuff. Not quite farming, but at least for sure herding animals and having that kind of domesticated approach to thing. And we don't know when it started, but we do know they went extinct about 7,000 years ago. So
well, that's right when there was a massive shift, that they call it the mid-Holocene optimum. They come out of that optimum period. So you got the Younger Dryas. And then suddenly, after 12,500 years ago, there's a sort of an ecological reset. Things stabilized for 6,000 years, but then again, after that mid-Holocene optimum, around 6,000 years, things started to change. Those lakes and river systems started to dry out. Not entirely, but there was definitely a change there, and you wonder if it was geomagnetic that really started to drive a lot of these changes.
Well, it's a really cool, not only historical context, but genetic context. It shows that there's this whole group of people that were erased from history. They're buried under the sand. I bet you there's, and you got that friend out there digging around. This is a whole Pleistocene and then Holocene era people that lived here, and they're not connected to any other peoples on the planets. Now they were a genetic mix of people from the Near East and the Levant and people from sub-Saharan Africa that mixed over time, and they lived here, but their lineage doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
They,
David Stig Hansen, he found quite a few old ancient cities right where that black square is.
yeah,
So you should
that's
talk to him one day about. He's got all kind of these artifacts and different like aerial imagery and different things that, I mean, they are a perfectly rectangular city as anything that you would see in a fortified wall complex out of Europe in modern day, what we consider fortified, castles slash cities, right
well,
there in that exact same area.
yeah. So if you look at this map, it talks about ancient peoples we know about from the Levant and where they were at about 7 to 12,000 years ago, where they lived. They show sub-Saharan Africans on here, and these guys are just out in the middle of the Sahara Desert by themselves, and they were there so long that they became genetically distinct from everyone else, and they went extinct. I mean, they're not represented, but it shows you where people were living 12,000 years ago. That means that there was a big population in North Africa of peoples that were, grazing animals. That means there was rivers, lakes, and who knows what kind of civilization and cultures they had there, but I'm sure they're going to start digging it out. And this is all up until about 7,000 years ago. They lived here from up. Maybe their genetic lineage goes back about 60,000 years ago, at least. And keep in mind, they're not related to any of these. So they were like a Cro-Mag guy that was living here and did their own thing the whole time and barely mixed with anybody in the rest of the world, and then disappeared. But the point
Oh, wait,
being,
now, Ransom, I would disagree with you, and I would say they're not going to be digging all that out because you'd have to rewrite history. So then we come into the hidden history sort of
well, that's kind of why I
topic
point
here
this
for a
out.
second.
This is the first genomic paper that shows that sub-Saharan Africans came out of Africa before the Islamic, distribution of peoples. I'll just put it that way because of people get upset, but um, these people were segregated by this desert forever and were barely made contact with the Egyptians in ancient times. But they're trying to tell people that some weird stories. The genetic information that's been coming out about peoples of the world totally rewrites the out of Africa theory. And it seems like maybe humans are not just out of Africa. They went into Africa, they came out of Africa, they came from Asia, they came from Europe, they came from probably continents and land masses that don't even exist anymore. So the odds on, knowing about every people and where they came from based on archaeology was silly, but now genes are putting it together. So this is a whole group of people that don't even doesn't have a representation today in the world, but it proves that there were people thriving. I'm going to say ranching is the closest. They were ranching and hunter gathering in this area with all kinds of fauna and flora that no longer exist today. So the idea that people are stable in an area that they think they live in the planet is kind of my point. Um, you might be shocked to know that some of these things change abruptly, like within a few hundred years, and then no one lives there for thousands of years. So, you might think you're safe in an area in a city, but it just might be gone. It's funny. I have a cousin that went for a European trip recently, right when the volcano was exploding there, and they were visiting Vesuvius. Now, I'm sure it dawned on all the tourists in Vesuvius, if the other volcano near them is blowing up, then maybe the one that you're checking out could blow up while you're there, and you could add to the archaeology of those people that didn't want to leave. Because in Vesuvius, we know a lot of people knew and they left, but some people thought, "Yeah, I don't believe you. I'm happy here. I'm just going to stay here," and they did. They stayed until pyroclastic flow erased them from the map. So it's like all these weird reasons. What happened then? I mean, we argue, but it seems like about 12,000 years ago, something happened that created the Sahara Desert as we know today, but it took thousands of years to get that way. It wasn't just like an overnight thing. However, other places overnight turned into wastelands.
Yeah, and I would say also, looking at the Caribbean, I think it was Guadalupe, early 1900s, like 1907, I believe. They had the volcano, and it buried part of the town there too. Like 20,000 people died. There's a famous song. I think it was Jimmy Buffett, when the volcano blows. About that, I think it was the island. So Vesuvius is the famous. It gets all the, I guess, eyeballs. Let's say 20 years ago, something equally as terrible occurred, but I think they didn't want to damage the Caribbean sort of tourist vibe, so they don't go on to that. Because I mean, who would want to
Lagging out, bro.
visit a haunted island where a pyroclastic throw flow buried in the city, and people, that's correct. But I just want everybody out there, if you're over dancing together, like, it just is ridiculous how
There you go.
interesting how it moves too fast and too quickly to be real. That's all I'm going to say. But buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Thank you so much. Ransom, take it over, man.
I was just tripping out about this idea of, them acting like they're buying up all this copper and stuff. And I was showing this article right here. On one hand, you have the future of electronic cars and all of this other stuff. On the other hand, 150 Navajo Nation homes just barely got added to the electric grid in 2025. So, yeah.
But they built how many
So now they
AI super, what do you call those, data centers?
Right.
There's been more
But
than
it
150
just
data
shows you-
centers added to the whole grid in this last year, or construction of
Well,
beginnings, or whatever. It's crazy.
I don't know the reason for, them not getting hooked up till now, but it's just, now they too can watch antenna TV, cable TV, and use the internet, in those homes too, so that they can be faked out about what's reality and what's not reality. But it's no surprising about the people that do not believe that anything's real and we've been having that same question, but more on a basic level, like, are they telling the truth? Is this propaganda? But now it's a whole nother level where literally the images, text, stories, all of it may be fabrications in AI written or propaganda that's neatly manipulated using the new technologies. And we're kind of at that weird spot right here. And I kind of wanted to get into some of these other weird topics. I know they're side topics, but I think that they fit in. You remember we had a lot of heart attacks. We had all these, this, for whatever reason, we had a heart attack. But I'm pleased to tell you that all of a sudden now, heart attacks are down nearly 90%. Or is that overtime? I don't know. So
No, wait
you
a
remember?
second. They told you something like opening your drapes too early in the morning and look outside could
That might
cause
give
a
you a
heart
heart
attack.
attack.
Some ridiculousness like this over the last couple of years.
No, that's what I'm saying. This is what's funny. This is probably more true than the other one. However, there were a large amounts of heart attacks since 2020. We can't get into why or theories on that, but it did happen. A lot of people had heart attacks, and that's measurable. But according to this article, it's 90% down. That means you're 90% less likely to die of a heart attack than you were in 1970. However, Everybody has heart disease. So if you do have a heart attack, that's the explanation. Plus opening the blinds or driving or doing sports or standing up too fast or making eye contact or any of the other silly things that they've told us that and so if you're the average person and you're reading these every day and they're like, oh, you can get a heart attack from eggs. Oh, you can get a heart attack from steak. Oh, you can get a heart attack from exercising. You can get a heart attack from not exercising. You can get a heart attack for exercising wrong or not long enough or not, short enough or whatever it is. It's like everything. But now
petting too many dogs will give you a heart attack.
Yeah. But they just keep on and on with these things. But the entire thing, I would think 90% of what's on now is just a distraction. So you stay out of their business. They have business to attend to. They're making a transhuman world where you will own nothing and be happy, and you just need to stay out of it. And you know what? They're happy to provide you with stories. And this is what I was trying to get to you. You were kind of breaking up there, but we had Nyquist on, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about this rumor about the Russians, maybe pushing migrants over into the European nations also, or maybe some people believe they're the only ones that were doing it. I've read a lot and I've been listening to their proposals and their WEF and all of that stuff. So I know that all the European Union people and a lot of people in the US and other NGOs and all these people have been moving people around or helping them move or enticing them to move. But now finally, that story that he was talking about has made it to the mainstream now that Europe is completely full of people that aren't from there. And then you got to wonder what's in the plan for all the places that they left.
Development, of course, without sharing the spoils.
Well, they have plans right here. It's the same ones these people had back, 7,000 years
Yep.
ago. And it seems to be more and more whenever you look in these things. This is the area, the old Silk Road. And I was going to show you this other picture.
Old Silk Road. Yeah, I did a whole video on that. They just completed the Iran to Tehran rail lines just 2 weeks before all this hostility started.
What if I were to tell you that the Silk Road goes back into Neanderthal and Denisovan days?
Would not surprise me at all. I mean, you got to be kidding me that you wouldn't think that humanity would use the easiest path of least resistance to go from one point to another across continents.
All right. Well, when we
why
get
would
back,
you choose a more difficult way if there's an easier way that's already been used before?
right.
With accommodation along the way, like trekking in the Himalaya. There's routes that go up the easiest way, and every so often there's another set of guest houses where you could stay. You wouldn't go up and over the mountain. That's crazy. You want to go the easiest way up.
Right. Watch, when we get back, I'll show you a map that will blow your mind. It's basically a map of the old Neanderthal Denisovan highways, the ones they walked back and forth across Europe and Asia. And it looks real similar to modern day, or if you think of the Silk Road or what's going on with the railway system, it's the same areas of travel for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years. One kind of human or another has been walking back and forth across the continents, or maybe
using
horseback.
animals
We
or
don't know.
riding animals. Why wouldn't you ride an elephant, a camel, a donkey? Why not?
Right. We don't know if they did or didn't. They just say they didn't, and we just came up with sticks and stones here recently and figured it all out with
Oh, we're so
bronze
smart.
chisels and
We're
chicken bones.
geniuses.
Anyway, we'll be back in like 2.5 minutes for this commercial break. If I can hit the button.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food. If you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food, even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
Don't forget to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
Shit. And we're back. We're back. If I could fix the cameras. There. That's not it. Technical difficulties. Just joking. Not really. But yeah, if I could find this map, I think it would just blow everyone's mind that the amount of time and scale that people have been just literally walking over the same grounds, fighting over the same grounds, using the same grounds, hunting on the same grounds. And then this idea that anybody's really native to anywhere is mostly silly because for all of mankind that we can tell, they've been just moving and migrating around. So at different times, obviously, people had different demographics and they moved to new places. That's what caused a lot of the mysteries is the last time they reset knowledge, which is something that it seems to tech giants and other people are willing to do or want to do. Again, it's not just a reset of civilization or how things function, but a reset of knowledge once again, like the Library of Alexandria, that we have no idea what was, hosted in that library or what kind of knowledge or secrets or ancient histories, or maybe they even had reference to the people that we were looking at on the paper. Who knows? Because, well, it got destroyed. So you had two kind of pushes. Even in recent times, you had the Islamic book burnings and gatherings. So they would gather stuff. But according to a lot of historical sources, when both the Catholics and the Islamic empire, whenever they would get these libraries, they would burn all of the copies. So in other words, they would burn plenty of the books that they had a copy of. But if they found a new book, they would keep that book for their own collection. Let me see if I could bring this, because I lost it on my other browser here. But let me see if I could bring up this old map of Denisovans here. No, wrong one. I have so many slides open on different topics here, but I think I can find it. Of course, it's hard to find right when I need it. Anyway, on to other stuff. I was going to bring up some of these other seemingly not related topics. Why 1 in 3 Americans admit they wake up already exhausted. Well, everyone's tired. You might think it might have something to do with the way that our world is shaping. It's changing. And then you got this one. Night owl face dementia risk that early birds don't. But there's a twist. Major study reveals. Basically, according to this, if you eat right and maybe sleep on a schedule, in other words, you sleep the same 7 to 8 hours every day at the same time, is more healthy than people that just stay up late and sleep at random hours or maybe nap during the day. But, who knows if any of this is even real. Because when you read these studies, they say might, maybe, could be, what if, maybe. And, we don't really know because it's always a maybe. But according to this, night owls face dementia risk. And then at the same time, wonder why they wake up exhausted. But that's okay because, if you drink coffee, if you're over 60, why over 60 should have 4 coffees a day? But I'll show you another article that says coffee is the reason that you can't sleep at night. And then another one that says it's, really bad for your health. And then another one that says it's great for your health. And then another one that says it's, a super stimulant. And then another one that says it's complete poison. So can you even believe any article when there's, 10, 11 other articles that say might, maybe, and could be, attached to that? But if you believe coffee was good and you drank some, according to this, but this is the really trippy thing that I think is going to kind of integrate into the idea of AIs and integrating basically hardware and wetware together, the merging of biological and technological things, is the things that we're now seeing, like the implant that Elon Musk offers and several other out there that seem like something that would be, really good and helpful for society and for people that need it. But on the other hand, it's a direct link into your conscious and subconscious mind. And if you don't believe that they would do the same thing that they do to other networks and hardwares, and that is figure out how to hack them and change things and recode things, I would think that would be naive. So there could be some benefits, though. I mean, think about this. Flashes of lucidity before death. The debate is shaking up neuroscience. And basically, the article talks about people that have neurological diseases. They were in comas. They have dementia or Alzheimer's. But right before they die, they remember everything. They know who they are. They're completely sharp. They're the best example of a person in their conscious mind and their self and their subconscious all rolled into one, few minutes before they die. Flashes of lucidity before death. But think about this. If they're now plugging you in basically the wetware to the hardware, like, I've showed in the past, we have computers that you can put brain tissue right to. We have robots running around with, a brain in a jar. The threshold has been broken and the line has been crossed. So there is a reality out there of biological meets technological existence, or maybe even consciousness. So when you start reading these articles about AI that are now deciding for themselves whether or not they want to be turned off, AIs that are rewriting their own code, AIs that are creating new languages to talk to other AIs because they feel like they're locked up. And, maybe that's not the threshold that needs to be broken. But then when you add people, and it's an increasing, chance that people will be hooked up to some kind of technology and in the near future, especially if they have one of these disorders or diseases that causes, neurological problems or dementia problems or any of these other things. But think about this. What if you were connected to a computer literally at the time that you die, at the moment of flashes of lucidity are happening, for that computer to then copy all of the images and text and, potentially video of the things that you're thinking. This is something that's very possible. I've shown on this show before, there are machines that can show the image of what someone's thinking. There's examples of them showing images from dreams. There's examples of computers that can write out each word that you think, word by word, and multiple different languages, basically mind reading or, telepathy, I guess, but between you and a computer. So the computer is now telepathic before humans were. So if you don't think that that's the world you live in, you should read more, because it is. Now, I am kind of weird and one of those people that thinks, what if all of these things exist in reality, that there's not someone right now on the earth somewhere that has combined all of these technologies into one system or platform? And would that system or platform be able to be conscious, especially when being able to tap in to the potential of the human mind, which some say is like or not unlike a quantum computer? What happens when quantum computer meets neural network? What happens when you can actually cross over in some semblance of real consciousness. Would that actually be you, or is that just a facsimile at the moment of separation? In other words, at the moment that you separated from the AI and algorithm, is that copy or duplication or facsimile of you just that, a facsimile, or is it actually part of you? And the question is, if so, could that already be happening? And if it was already happening, is it even of human origin? So that's all woo woo, of course. But what if there's a government agency out there trying to do just that, which is more realistic than an extraterrestrial or interdimensional being doing it? Is that just regular, run of the mill, power hungry humans are probably somewhere fiddling with all that stuff right now. And then whenever you look through the headlines, people are asking, is this real? Is this not real? Are those real people on TV? Is this, video I saw of the bombs dropping, or, some bloody baby being carried out of some rubble? Is that even a real video? Are you being manipulated? And, on top of that, what would you do if you found out it was all fake? Does that change the course of what you're doing daily? Is that going to, make you decide what you're going to eat and what not to eat? And it's funny how these topics kind of circle around. Here's another one I think is funny. Potty mouth. No, that's the wrong one. That one's funny, but that's not the right one. Here it is. This freaky thing. This is another thing that makes people think, you might be in a simulation. Why are you significantly more likely to die on your birthday? And here's why. And the article kind of gets into, all of the things that people do on their birthday that they might not do otherwise, like drive a little crazy or have a midlife crisis and do something dangerous like paragliding or skiing or mountain climbing or, whatever it is, drive too fast in their muscle car on their birthday, or the fact that people like to celebrate and do narcotics and alcohol on their birthday. So they make dumb decisions after that. Another theory is that some people that are sick or old actually use their birthdays for milestones or something to get through. And what actually happens is they just wait, or they hold on for that next birthday, that next milestone, that next achievement. And that is why they're more likely to die on their birthday. And then, do they have flashes of lucidity? What was it? Lucidity now, right before they die. And, to round it around here, I wanted to bring this up, and I thought David, he must have got zapped out on the storm or something, but I thought he would be really interested in this article right here. I don't know why that keeps putting that little. There we go. Scientists finally found the psychedelic source of LSD, the fungus from which LSD first synthesized, has finally been observed and described by researchers who suspected that fuzz inside seed coats of morning glory plants. So in other words, they found out that the compound that we've been getting off the fungus we've been getting is actually off the outside of it, but that this fungus actually grows, or the fungus actually grows inside of the flowers. So inside of the plant, like these morning glories and other stuff, this neurogenerative conditions, they call it, could be helped by eating this fungus. There's fungus among us. And, last year I saw an article that said that they could finally separate the psychedelic effects from the compounds. So, in other words, you could use some of these mind-expanding compounds without having to go through the hallucinogenic phase that you would be going through. Anyway, in 1963, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann described what gave morning glories psychoactive properties, the lysergic acid, that would later lead him to accidentally create LSD. Or you can just eat the mushrooms. You can eat mushrooms and kind of skip to the end. I don't know. But I thought that was cool. It's maybe not why, if these people experienced that, they wouldn't wake up exhausted, because you would get that reset. But is anything real? I don't know. I think we're about to have to reset the way that we think about things because of all the new epiphanies and changes in our reality. And it seems like on the news, like, everybody was arguing. They had a whole meltdown. The right, the left were at civil war with ideas about who said what, about who shot Nellie in the belly with the meatball first. I seen, little civil wars amongst the MAGA and the conservatives and the leftists, all about whether or not we should just go ahead and have a war, or whether or not a war was going to happen, which everyone still doesn't know. But I did predict last week that despite all of the kind of propaganda leading up to World War III, that it would amount to nothing more than a few airstrikes. You can go back, rewind it, check it on your TiVo, whatever. I told you that. They were just going to drop some bombs, and that would be it for a while until they decide what's next. Do they really want to go to World War III? I wouldn't think so. However, they might want to do certain things at strategic points in time to control the flow of resources, whether that be oil, troops, or food for that. A lot of people were worried about the world's food supply. If the Strait of Hormuz, or whatever if that's the right name for it, got closed down, well, it would make oil go up. It would cause food prices. It didn't happen in the short 24-hour. People went ballistic on each other in a 24-hour period about who's right, who's wrong, whether or not we're going to war. Who cares? They were on nonsensical points, and you don't know what's going to happen, because any day, any event could trigger the same events again, and they can use it and they can make it last or not last as long as they want, in order to control the prices on the things that you buy, the things that fuel your life. That's what they do every time. Teeth grinding. Please don't. Please don't. Don't eat that many morning glories and you won't grind your teeth. Anyway, let's move to this right here. Supposedly, the way things are rolling out here is World War III is slowing down. I mean, judging by this week's headlines. But you could go back a week and you would think we were, well into World War III. NATO has just surrendered Ukraine to Putin, allegedly, according to the Telegraph. And then you got this stuff over here, if I can share it with you. Supposedly, Bibi, if that's what they call him, is beyond control. And the other, Gulf states fear Israel's unchecked power. Well, it looks like actually their power just got checked by the United States for the first time that I remember. Where basically, we're the ones supplying them with the bombs. So if we want it to stop, we stop it by not refueling them, by not giving them more stuff. That's pretty obvious. However, I would argue that Israel is a portion of the Western world and is a satellite of that Western world. So it doesn't matter what happens. We will protect Israel for our benefit, their benefit. It really doesn't matter. It's going to happen. It's because that's the center of the chessboard. And all throughout time, every empire, all of them always want the Mediterranean, and especially that little piece that connects everybody with everybody there. And then, are you going to drive in these cars? I wouldn't. I'm not driving anything I don't have complete control of: the brakes, the acceleration, and the steering. I really like Teslas. I really like the idea that you could push a button on your car and go somewhere. However, I don't want to lose control. It's the same reason I don't like flying in airplanes. You give over all of your sovereignty, all of your choices, and your fate and your destiny, all of that in a nice little package seat that you could barely fit in, barely shove your belongings in, to go somewhere and still not have the stuff you need, because it's either illegal to bring with you, or that country's different than your country, or your country won't let you take it, or whatever, because we're micromanaged. And it's funny to see a bunch of freedom-loving people argue on the internet as if we still, despite having the president we supposedly won or whatever, is still living in a completely micromanaged world. It's still micromanaged down to the local police level, who can kill you if you do not, do what they say fast enough or quick enough or in the right way. That's the country you live in. But it's a lot better than all the other countries. Are you going to buy these Chinese cars? And this one I wanted to get to right here. Let me make it bigger so all of you guys can read it. These people are outraged that took a cruise right here. The Devon Marble stepped on board a Carnival Triumph cruise ship that was At the dock in Galveston, Texas, he assumed his biggest obstacle was to overcome and impress his future in-laws, but it turned into a nightmare. He had to poo in a bucket. But what's funny is if you are really all about, being prepped and ready for things, you should realize that you might not have a toilet. What are you going to do with all that sewage if the power's off for weeks and weeks and weeks? You're going to have to figure out where to put your poo. Yes, it's a nasty thing to think about. But I know all about the bag in a bucket. Bag in a bucket. You poop in the bag. It better be a good bag, a nice bag, a thick bag, and you tighten it down and you put it in with other stuff and get rid of it. But anybody that's ever done the RV life or camping life, and you can't just leave your crap, lying around, so to speak, and only in certain places can you dig a hole and bury it. The problem is, what if the light's out and then now every place is like the national park where you have to, there's no electricity. And if you're going to poop in the forest, you're supposed to, dig you a little hole, poop in the hole, bury the hole, take all your junk with you, your trash. But what if everybody's out there? You think millions of people are going to be digging little holes in the forest around where they live to try to take a poop? Of course not. So the only real way to do that is, put your big boy pants down, so to speak, and poop in a bag and not make it a nightmare. I mean, it'll get real nasty. This is a way that you can keep sanitary for long periods of time. Now, it's true, eventually you're going to have to figure out what to do with the stockpiled poo, which there's different ways. Like in the military, you can burn it with kerosene or, other stuff. But it's really doubtful that in a short period of time, you're going to be digging big holes or latrines. So poo in a bucket. You should have a bucket with bags that go to that bucket in case of emergency, so you can relieve yourself without things getting nasty. Yes, that's my piece of survival advice now. And just think about it. If this guy already had a whole roll of like hefty cinch sacks with them, he could have already resorted to pooing in the bags. I don't know why they don't just put their, off the edge like most people do in the ocean and, let the fishes eat it, but whatever. You shouldn't be too good to poop in a bag. Now, this has been going around. Oops, let me pause the sound on that. Everybody's been seeing the fireball in the sky over the southeast. A meteorite came down and burned up. And what I laugh about is when people talk about incoming, big asteroids or something, as if that's something that you should actually worry about. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that at all. Because if it ever happened, you wouldn't care. It would be over in a split second. Just like on this video here, if I could show it. Look, there's a fire streak right there. It just came down. Now, this is a little bitty thing, but it was seen by a lot of people and photographed from different angles. At least I still think that they're saying it is a meteorite. I would expect that it was. But nice little fireball over the south. But my point is, if it was a big one, it would be that, and then you were dead. So there's no point in even worrying about things like that. Why would you worry about that? You can accept that it does happen, and people get smited out in a split second. But a flaming object was seen streaking across the skies of several southern states, sparking panic and confusion, and no explosion or fire was reported on the ground because it completely burned up before it hit. Police scanner, they hear calls of woman about a giant fireball from the sky in Tennessee to Georgia. People caught echoes or witnessed it or whatever. I bet it made a nice little sound if you were right under there. But it's just another of those things that you shouldn't have to worry about. Because you can't. I mean, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do if the lights did go out? Well, you'd live like these 150 people from the Navajo Nation's been living forever. You'd get over it. You'd figure out how to live without the electricity. It wouldn't be a big deal after about a month, especially if you have prepared for the day where that doesn't happen. What really boggles my mind is that people do not prepare for not having electricity. They're like, yeah, the grid's not going to go down. You're crazy. You're one of those conspiracy theorists. Yet, every single year, hurricanes, fires, tornadoes turn off the power or the heat, or it's too cold. And the ice busts or something, on the power lines. But every year, people are out of power, and for all intents and purposes, the grid is out. where you live. So why wouldn't you be prepared with some kind of technology to keep you warm, make sure you have water, you have a food supply, and you might want to shit in a bucket, just like those people on that cruise line were told to do, but lost their mind because they just couldn't imagine. I paid a lot of money for this cruise. I don't want to, poop in a bucket. So I get to hijack the show, I guess. I don't know what happened to Dubai, but we're going to talk about hummingbirds and how you might be killing them. So don't do that. Don't do this in this article right here from Vox. If you're like me, you're outside and you're feeding the hummingbirds and you're trying to grow flowers and food. And if you're growing food, it does better if you have a lot of flowers growing by the food, because the bees and the birds come in and pollinate the flowers on the food that you want to grow. So if you're growing, anything really that blossoms, you're going to want to have flowers and hummingbirds and bees around your house. You're not going to want to go around with wasp spray and spray everything and to the point where you have no wildlife, because believe it or not, all of those critters have a place. The problem is some of us like to watch them, so we make hummingbird feeder, or you buy that store-bought stuff. And evidently, if you're going to do that, and see, this is something I didn't actually know either, because I would leave the nectar out there for quite some time until they drank it, because around here in the desert, they want water. I've even seen other birds that are not hummingbirds coming up to this area where I have the hummingbird feeders and stuff, and they're tipping it and they're trying to drink the water out of it. It's pretty cool. But if you're feeding the birds, you're going to have to dump and clean those things about every 2 or 3 days, or you're going to kill the birds or make them sick from microbes. And it's just another one of those things that people don't mean to do that end up screwing up the environment they live in. And no, I'm not a super greenie or a tree hugger, although, I do like trees and I do like nature, and there's no reason to poison it, especially these little beautiful creatures, if you don't need to. But just think about that for a human point of view. You don't want your water sitting with any kind of drink or, sugar or any of that. If it's been left out for hours in the heat, it's no good anymore. That's why there's a lot of waste with people that drink soda and tea and all these other things. They let it get hot. One way to prevent that is put ice in it. It melts. It keeps your drink actually good for some period of time, but still, you don't want to drink that if it's been left out for some time. Well, the same goes for the birds. Don't kill your birds, because you're giving them bacteria and microbes in there and funguses and different stuff like that. So you need to change the hummingbird feeder about every 2 or 3 days and give them and wash it, and then give them some new stuff and enjoy them. Yeah. And speaking of birds, people over here, I think this is it's in Massachusetts. A potty mouth Samuel L. Jackson parrot up for adoption in Massachusetts. It's so bad that I can't even play the video of the guy, because, he cusses a lot. I wonder what happened to Dubai here. I need to message him or see what's going on. Give me 1 second. What happened, Holmes? Where'd you go? Besides, nobody wants to listen to me babble all night. Huh. Take up all the time, babble. Let's see what's going on in the chat. And if you'd like to help the show, let me put this QR code up there. You can help this show by hitting that. Oh, it covers my mouth, man. What's going on? Anyway, you guys are still reading about the potty mouth Samuel L. Jackson parrot over there. So what's going on? Let's see who all's in here. A lot of people on the YouTube. How's it going? And then also in the Rumble, how you guys doing? And I'm stalling for a minute to see what happened to Dubai. Is there thunderstorms in Tennessee? Is that what's going on? Could be. Let me see what the weather is here. It's about to dump rain on me. Well, let's move this over here so everybody can see here. Give me something to talk about for 5 seconds. There it is. Let's do this guy here. That is not the right one. Here we go. I like to go to this thing right here because it's a quick way to just see what's going on. And you just click this triangle up here for severe weather. What do we got? We got aerial flooding over here. Excessive heat out in Arizona. And yep, look there. Maybe they maybe got hit by something. I don't see nothing on the radar over here. But they got flash flood warnings, heat advisories, aerial flooding for Washington, D.C. Out here, aerial flooding out in the middle of Missouri. It's weird. Kansas City always gets targeted. And no tornadoes. I don't see any tornadoes. Let's look at the Doppler. See the Doppler radar. And there's all the storms. And see, I'm about to get hit by this thing. Lightning, rain. It should be headed this direction right towards me here in New Mexico. And we just got monsooned by this a little while ago. And it seems like every time I get a monsoon right here on this mountain range, you guys die over here in Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, all the way up to Chicago. Sometimes it goes this Tennessee route right here. But it's almost like I could predict whether or not you're going to have tornadoes if a supercell crosses over my valley here in New Mexico, across these mountains, picks up a bunch of moisture, heads out across the plains here in Texas in the Panhandle, and it seems when it gets about right here, it just turns into deadly storms. Like this one right here. Storm arriving in 20 minutes if you live over here in Parsons, Kansas there. Looks like it's headed right up there to the Kansas City area. I never got a response from Dubai. What's going on here? What happened? Where'd you go? I think his internet went all the way out and he is stranded. He shouldn't have said those bad things about the AI. You wish you would cool down where you're at. Old as dirt. Let me open up this Rumble page and see what they're saying also. I accidentally shut it. So what do you guys want to talk about? The floor is yours. I'm going to check and see if you guys got some questions going on. I see some people in there. There's 93 people, but they're not talking that much in there. At least it doesn't show it to me over in Rumble. They're complaining about the connection. We're in the drought in central Louisiana. Clouds evaporate before they reach me. That's sad. Well, they're on a different arc. So somebody's mad that there's some kind of internet thing. I don't know what that is. It just seems to be happening. Trees are dying here. Where's here? Where's here? Anyway, let's back this thing out. What is going on here? It's amateur hour, someone says. Well, I am an amateur. I am not a professional newscaster by trade. I actually just, do my own thing and do what I do, whether it's in nature or on the internet. So I guess you can call me an amateur. Sorry about that. No, we're not clueless that the broadcast is cutting in and out. I'm just trying not to be rude while he's talking, and sometimes it comes back clear. If you do a live show and you talk to people that are in different places, stuff like that does happen, and you just kind of got to roll with it and not get mad about it. But I'm sorry that if that caused you discomfort there. The central Louisiana hills is where everything's droughting. Wow. Let's see here. Now we got everybody. I don't know if you guys have been on Twitter or like you guys do that. But since the back and forth of the missiles, I've been just watching this. I'm going to say the R word, back and forth between these influencers, YouTubers. It does seem like, some people, once they get talking on the internet for a long time, they feel like they're very important when it comes to opinions. So if someone else doesn't have that same opinion, they get all upset, and then they go to war on the internet, and it's just funny. I mean, I've been watching the back and forth, and most of it is just simply because whether or not someone wanted us to go to war or didn't want us to go to war, or thought we were going to be in war or thought we weren't going to be in war, or whether or not one group of people made the right decisions or not, or what they should do. It's like everybody is definitely now in this new age where you can't believe what you see. Everybody is a analyst for everything. So everyone's a scientist. And I'm not being like the mainstream media that's like, oh, you shouldn't do your own research. What I mean is when it's like a political analyst or a media analyst, and they have their own worldview. If anyone else, messes with their reality, they start falling to pieces, and attacking each other and calling each other names, and it's just totally bizarre. It's like what I've talked about before, that the world is in a state of cabin fever. So everything under the sun has happened so many times that you're used to, is there going to be a false flag? Is it legit? Who knows? And how would we ever know unless you were actually part of any operation or thing going on? It's like I have my opinions about, all kinds of events, 9/11, the Middle East, whatever. But do they count? Does it matter? Does it help me eat my food where I live? No, not really. And most of the time, what we're talking about really is people that are upset at each other. So other people are getting tribal about people they don't know, that live thousands of miles away, that are fighting about things that happened thousands of years ago. And most of that's probably wrong, what they think they know. That's kind of my view on it. And it's just like funny, from everything from anthropology to science, on how they come up with these. This is like the bedrock canon of what's going on. Like when people argue about hominids or how people got here, it's kind of funny because, if you found a fossil, that's like one in a, I don't know what the odds are that you even found it, that there was the ability for a fossil to be made. Then you have to, consider the fact that how random it would be found in the future, or how it didn't get destroyed over time. And then you get this one little 0.0000% of a story, and then they just roll with it like this is gospel. This is gospel. We know everybody did this because this. And I'm more about, well, we know they did that at that particular time. We know they were there at that particular time, and we know they had these things at that particular time, but we don't know what was going on in the 99.99999% of the rest of the time that there were people in places doing what, who knows, because they didn't make a fossil or leave crap in the dirt for us to come along and find. So the idea that any of these people know the story of man, and I'm talking about people from like Graham Hancock all the way over to mainstream scientists and all of these other people, all they know is what the evidence shows that somebody was doing specifically at a point in time. They don't know how it got there. They don't know how long, it might have been somewhere else, or like tools. If they found tools, yeah, they had those tools. But that doesn't mean that other people in other places didn't also have those tools and you didn't find them yet. Or the idea that people were in certain places only between these time periods throughout time, they don't know that. The only way that they would know that is if they found every body of every person that ever died going where they went. So we have to keep our minds open and remember, they're finding new stuff every day. Genes are changing the story of where we came from, not only where we came from, but where we're going now that we live in an era where they're manipulating those said genes. So they have the whole plethora of these genomes now, from not just one kind of human, but 1, 2 kind of, 3 kind of, 4 kind of, all the way up to probably 12 or 15 different hominids of human peoples, not the same ones, but different ones that lived on this earth at one time or another. And they have those genomes. And now we're in the era where you can play with those genomes. So those old stories that people at least some people translate it to mean, or they think it means that there was some kind of genetic modification in humans at some point. That's not that far-fetched, especially when you don't know at what degree technology reached, and I'm going to say the million years of big-brained different kind of humans rolling around on the earth doing stuff, having epics of thousands of years, hundreds of years, or decades. We don't know about those times because they weren't writing them down. If they did write it down, that's gone, or we haven't found it. But to just say that we know, it's like the Egyptology thing. That the whole story is, basically come apart from the physical evidence there. Obviously, some people were there at some point building stuff, and then other people came along and either copied, but not as good, or they didn't even build that stuff and they just said they did. That's why or maybe the documents on how they did it just aren't around anymore, and that's the truth, but we don't know. We have no idea. That's the problem. So now we're getting into the era where AI is making the headlines and the videos and writing the stories and writing the presidential speeches. So we don't even know at what level anything actually is real at this point anymore anyway. And you could just kind of brush it off, but when you really think about it, it's kind of concerning, because you have all of these talking heads and personalities and influencers and newscasters and podcasters and mainstream media. And then you have, all of their little groups of political analysts or scientific people to push whatever narrative that they're pushing. And are they real? We keep finding out people are paid to say certain things. So half of what they have is mistruths or, another story or whatever. I don't know. It's very unbelievable things that sometimes happen. And then on top of that, I'm just, scrolling through these feeds of what I call the TikTok effect. So that's what most people are doing right now. They look at TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and they all have some form of the 1 to 3 minute video. And what that's doing is basically capturing the goldfish nature of human attention span. So if they can get that little dopamine hit, and it's like just like a casino, the slot machine, where you go there and you get the instant dopamine hit of trying and losing and trying and winning and trying and losing. And then they have it on the video games. People play these little games really fast. It's all about instant gratification and dopamine hits. And then you look at the physical aspect of people living, and the food is all designed for that quick dopamine instant gratification thing. So now you have a whole society that's built in this fashion, and now you have an AI algorithm system on various different avenues of connection with humans that uses that instant gratification, quick dopamine hit, addictive personality, and then on top of that, you throw in the goldfish attention span of like 9 to 10 seconds at a time. So you can really strain yourself and pay attention from about 30 seconds to 3 minutes, I think is probably the max for most people. So on every social media platform, you have this style of video that's showing you little factoids out of context, historical things out of context, completely nonsense. I've seen one phenomenon where they would like show you, hey, this guy saved a deer and he took the deer and he nursed the deer, and now the deer's grown up and the deer comes and visit him, and they play this sad music on there and you got an AI voice telling you the story. But if you look closely, you realize that it's a different deer in each shot. Some of them aren't even the same species or gender, and it's a completely fabricated, made up thing. But it satisfied the attention span of the goldfish, the quick dopamine and repetitive addictive nature of it. And, you move on. It's the TikTok effect. It's on all of them. And, I'm guilty. I've done it. I catch myself doing it. Oh, yeah. And then you find out you've watched 2 or 3 or 4 of those little short videos in no time and lost, 5 or 6 minutes of your day that you could have potentially been using to have some kind of progress in your life, or, build something, plant something or something. And I'm guilty of that too. But think about the total domination of the human domain that this is causing. So everything from television to those little short videos, say you're having a longer attention span and you like to use that attention span to pay attention to a show, a series of novels or books, or a TV series, a movie, a set of movies that's in a series, whatever. They can get and capture the average human being into where they know every single. Let's take Star Wars or Star Trek for an example. People can easily remember the historical facts, characters, background, factoids about every single character on a show or a sports game or anything like that. They know the stats, they know the names, they know where the people grew up, they know their hometown, their favorite song. The amount of information that they absorb for nonsensical and fictional things is bizarre, because think about if you were using your mind to process reality, real things, or something that gave you progress in your life, and you were using that same attention span. Say instead of knowing, which Jedi did what in which century, you actually knew something about the Federalist Papers and the Constitution of the United States. So when you see these nonsensical debates on, you're just like, what? That doesn't, neither one of you guys make sense. Neither one of you understand it. It's like this idea of defunding the police. This is one of those good ones that they get. There's two sides. They got that dopamine hit, that instant gratification, the tribalism. Which side are you on? And then they give you a topic like the Second Amendment or something like that. And then they give you one side of the argument and then the other side of the argument, but there's no third, critical thinking going on there. So with the defund the police department, on one hand, you have a bunch of crazy leftists that want to defund the police basically for the purpose of shutting them down, for they're no longer a policing entity, and therefore can't respond to or do stuff. And that's the fallacy that's there. Actually, the police in the United States could be considered the world's fourth largest military, because they're funded great. They're funded federally. They're funded locally. They get every toy under the sun. They get military equipment. They get backup. Literally, the whole chain of backup. A local guy needs help. It's the state comes and backs him up. The county backs him up. If anything happens to a law enforcement officer, they all respond. The entire weight of the United States government will come down upon you, with each guy wearing ballistic vest and 9 clips and a taser gun and pepper spray and 3 cuffs, and he knows what the law is better than you do, and he don't care about Constitution. He doesn't like them sovereign citizens, but in reality, he is the sovereign citizen. He is the person that can not follow the law and get away with it later. Maybe he'll get sued, maybe he won't, but really no accountability at all. And that's the fallacy on both sides. It's like the fourth largest military if you combine all of the law enforcement together and then realize that they cover the whole map of the United States and every place that we are. They have a police force there, and they have everything they need, except for in specific areas, like in major metropolitan areas where those leftists feel like you should defund the police there, in the only spot where it's probably necessary to have a lot of funding. So the complete argument is a fallacy from both ends. Of course, you don't want to defund the police to the point where it doesn't work. But on the other hand, maybe you should defund the police in all of the areas where it's not needed, like ticketing or tax collection, or, the list goes on of reasons that law enforcement exists, to eat the substance out of the citizen. Talking dangerous talk. I better settle down here. Anyway, before I get us put off the air, and I think we're rolling up to the end of the show, but just think about this idea of these fake fallacies, and then think about it for a minute, and not, make your mind based on some personality on the internet that you like or dislike. Like, I think, what was the one I was kind of paying attention to that was like, these are the days of our lives. It was a female influencer that probably everybody knows, getting mad at some other people, and they're back and forth about who's getting paid to say what and all of this stuff. Guess what? I ain't getting paid to say nothing. Nobody tells me what to do. So, I don't care about your Iranian-Israeli conflict unless it affects me. I mean, that's the truth. How does it affect me as an American citizen? Will it make my food prices go up if you guys go to war? Will it make the cost of transportation go up if you guys go to war? And then I have to ask myself, why is that? Why is your problem my problem? And the reality is because all of the nations on earth are interconnected, and that's the truth of it. And so they force it to be your problem. It's not like you can opt out or not take part. You're going to have to. You have to eat. You have to pay your taxes. You have to live here. So those people that are all radical on one side, acting like, we can't have government and society because, I'm anti-government or whatever. That's all silly. But also, it's a reality that the government is overreaching and, puts their nose into things that they don't need. I was watching this thing from Ted Nugent the other day complaining about all of the silly laws that they had there about hunting. Like whether or not your zipper's undone on the bow container, and you already got your bow out, you're ready to hunt. Oh, you don't have it zipped up. You're going to get a fine for that. Oh, you're hunting out of a tree, which is an effective. No, you can't do that. So they make up all these silly laws that are just silly. It's like whenever they got rid of the paper bags in place of plastic bags. So the paper bags were cool. We learned how to use them. You took your grocery home in them. People learned how to not rip them, reuse them. They were a cool resource, a renewable resource that you had. Well, we got to save the trees. Let's make it plastic. Then they got the plastic and, we get the plastic and we learn how to use that. And now everything's in plastic bags. And we wrap our products that are in plastic bags and we put them in another plastic bag. And then we take those home. And then you look outside and you see Walmart, Dollar Store, Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, this, that, and the other thing. Their bags are in my tree. Their bags are in my yard. I didn't do that. I took my bags. I took them home. I dealt with them. And it wasn't a problem if you're a normal citizen that takes care of things. But instead you have, and I'm thinking, did that really save the planet? To have millions of bags trapped in the tumbleweeds and the trees everywhere, making the interstate look like crap? Probably not. But then they decide, you know what? Plastic bags are bad. You need to bring your own bag. You need to bring your own bag. You need to, you know what? Matter of fact, why don't you scan your own groceries with the robot and then, put all of your groceries in your bag yourself so you can bag your groceries yourself and then take it out to your car and take it home, which means that eventually you're going to say, you know what? It's easier just to order it and have it delivered to my house, especially if I'm going to have to bag it myself and I'm going to have to ring it up myself. I'm going to have to find it in the store myself because no one's working or doesn't know. And then you get into that transhuman world where everything is robotic. Robots run everything. They stock the shelves. They bring the equipment. They drive the supplies to the location, and then you can just order it. And then maybe they might still have that delivery guy that breaks your stuff at the doorstep, or maybe not. Maybe that will also be a robot. But from the looks of things, I was watching New York and watching the little food robots go down the street, and they repeatedly got molested by the transients, crackheads, random, people that feel like they're being cool. They had the TikTokers doing stuff to it. So everybody's doing stuff to the little robot, which inside has a couple sandwiches someone ordered. And I'm thinking, you know what? That perfect robotic utopian world would only work if you get rid of the majority of the population. In other words, all of the poor people, all of the middle class. Then people like the billionaires that, there's like 3,000 of them that increased, I don't know how many $1 trillion in the past year or two. Those guys and all of the service people that work for them and their companies, just like in one of those futuristic movies where the company is basically the new country, then all of those people have to exist. You got to fix the robots, but they don't need you. They don't need the middle class. They don't need the poor people. And then finally, they can have their sandwich delivered to their house and their groceries via robot, via an app on their phone, completely tracked and traced, and their financial, information just happens because of their biometrics and who they are. But mark my words, the lower peasant class is not intended to take part in that world. So between now and when they have it set up, there has to be a worldwide trigger, whether it natural or unnatural, man-made or not, that resets us all the way back down to a smaller population. Just like those people that used to live in North Africa that disappeared from the history books and the genetic lineage of human beings on the planet. So don't think you're special. Things can happen there. Anyway, the hour is kind of rounded off there, and that's it for me. Toodaloo. I'll look one more time in the chat. Greetings from North Canada. Yeah, play dumb. Get them to scan your items for you. The machine's broke. The machine's broke. Can you come scan it for me? I don't know how to do it. Anyway, let's see what's going on in the YouTube realm. They're just kind of they talking about their own things in there. Anyway, that's all for Civilization Cycle this week, and hopefully we'll figure out what the issue is, and we'll be back with another exciting episode of Civilization Cycle with David Dubine. And don't forget, while I'm here by myself, if you would like to help the show, you can click on there, scan that little QR code futuristic transhuman thing right there, and buy us a coffee so we could stay up late at night and get dementia, if you know what I'm talking about, unless you're a goldfish and then you don't remember. Or you can, sign up for our newsletter where Dubine works on that every week. He's proud of it. He puts all the points together and sends it out. So don't forget to sign up for that. Just scan the QR code there. Don't be scared. Join the robotic revolution and just use your phone and scan that code right there. Unless you're on your phone. And then I don't know how you do it because, I'm always using a real computer. Anyway, peace out. Have a good one.